in the fifth year of his marriage to Jason, he developed feelings for his best friend's sister. Can you stop being so paranoid? I only see her as a sister, and nothing inappropriate is happening. She's young and unwell, and I'm simply looking after her. It's unsafe for her to travel alone, so I'm accompanying her out of responsibility. You're reading too much into this. Can't you let go of your resentment toward a child? I gazed at the man who felt more and more like a stranger to me, and nodded, whispering, "Okay." Satisfied with my patience and understanding, he believed I was being considerate while I marked the final stroke on the calendar. The 30-day cooling-off period had ended. On Jason's birthday, I handed him our divorce certificate. By the time I reached the hospital, it was already past 11 at night. Standing in the dimly lit hallway, I peered through the glass wall into the infusion room. My husband, who had claimed he was out playing cards with a client, was holding a slender young girl in his arms. She had an IV needle in her arm, leaning against him weakly, her lips pursed as she spoke. Jason's expression was soft and patient. I stared at the scene before me. I had seen this girl many times. She was Lily, the cousin of Jason's close friend, 7 years younger than him, youthful, full of life, charming, and lovely. Compared to her, I was just a woman exhausted by 5 years of marriage. It was no wonder Jason had grown distant and irritable. All his patience had been redirected elsewhere. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually, I stepped forward into the infusion area. The moment Jason spotted me, his face shifted. He whispered something to Lily before striding toward me, grabbing my wrist roughly and pulling me into a secluded corner. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. I didn't tell him that for the past month, Lily had been secretly sending me their chat logs and suggestive photos, flaunting them. Instead, I asked, "Weren't you playing cards with your client?" For a brief moment, guilt flickered across Jason's face, but he quickly masked it with confidence. Lily suddenly felt unwell and Ethan couldn't leave, so he asked me to stay with his sister for her IV. Don't get the wrong idea again. I'm exhausted and don't want to argue with you. Besides, we're in a hospital. It would be humiliating to make a scene here. You might not care, but I do. Jason and I had fought fiercely over Lily before, leaving us both drained and miserable. So, he was capable of feeling embarrassment too. I lifted my head and asked, "Aren't you going to ask why I'm here?" Jason hesitated before recalling. "Are you sick?" I smiled lightly, my tone almost teasing. "What else would I be doing here? Catching you in the act?" His expression shifted dramatically, a mix of panic and frustration. "Mandy, you're at it again?" "How many times do I have to tell you? There's nothing between Lily and me. I'm only looking after her out of duty, that's all." I met his gaze calmly. "I didn't accuse you of anything." His face darkened further as I cornered him. "Don't think I can't tell when you're being sarcastic. What's wrong with you? You weren't like this before. You used to be sweet and agreeable. Look at yourself now. Sharp-tongued, bitter, constantly nagging like an old woman." My fingers curled slightly. Even though I had prepared myself, his words still cut deep. I used to be obedient and gentle. Why didn't he talk about his own past? He once cherished me, swore his love, held me like I was the most precious thing in his life. But now, "Fine, if you're not unwell, go home," Jason urged. "We'll talk about it later. I don't want to embarrass myself here." As he spoke, his eyes darted toward Lily, afraid I'd make a scene. I nodded. "All right. You should head home soon too." I really need to discuss something with you. Jason looked at me in surprise, clearly not expecting me to agree so easily. I turned and walked out of the hospital. Back home, I sat at the dining table, staring into space. I had spent 5 years as Jason's wife. Marrying him had been my greatest wish come true. I saw him as my savior, my entire world. When I first realized he had fallen for another woman, my initial reaction wasn't anger but fear. Fear that he would leave me, abandon me. My father passed away when I was young, and my mother remarried. My stepfather was a violent alcoholic who lashed out at me over the smallest things. As I grew older, his abuse worsened. Not just beatings, but unwelcome touches. I was too young and too scared to fight back. Jason was the one who saved me, protected me, showed me love, and gave me a home. I had depended on him for nearly a decade, from my youth until now. I never thought it would all end so abruptly and painfully. At 2 in the morning, Jason returned home. Guilt weighed on him, making his tone harsh. "Why are you still up? Are you waiting to start another argument?" I smiled and said, "There's a document that needs your signature." "What?" Jason barely finished speaking when his phone rang. He glanced down, and his face instantly tensed, looking both anxious and guilty. I knew it had to be Lily. The house sale agreement. Weren't we exchanging it for a new one? I asked, pretending to test if he still cared about our home. I was lying to him. "Are you signing it now?" I placed the divorce papers on the table, my fingers trembling slightly as I watched him. Jason didn't suspect anything. Without even glancing at the document, he flipped to the last page and neatly signed his name. A sudden burst of laughter escaped me, causing Jason to sense something was off. He frowned and asked, "What are you laughing at?" I lifted my gaze to the man I had cherished for a decade and chuckled at myself. "Thank you, Jason. Thanks for looking after me for 10 years and for making it so easy to let go." That night, Jason didn't return home. The following morning, I got up and went to my workplace to process my resignation. Once my marriage was finalized, I planned to move to the countryside where my grandmother had lived. Though she had passed away long ago, her old house remained and could be made livable with some cleaning. The resignation handover would take a week or two, so I still had to continue my routine duties. After work, I visited a law firm to consult with an attorney about divorce proceedings and asset division. I intended to take my rightful share of our joint property. By the time I returned home, the sky had already darkened. As soon as I stepped inside, I was met with Jason's disgruntled face. "Didn't you get off work a while ago? Why are you back so late?" he questioned. "I just went for a walk," I responded casually. Jason had never cared about my daily whereabouts, yet now he said, "Then hurry up and make dinner." "I'm starving." Remaining composed, I answered gently, "I've already eaten out. You can order takeout." "Who did you eat with?" "Why didn't you inform me beforehand?" "I've been waiting for you at home," Jason grumbled, clearly displeased. "I rarely get the chance to have a meal at home, and now you're making me resort to takeout." Not wanting to spark another unnecessary argument, I relented. "If you're really that hungry, I'll make you a bowl of noodles." That finally appeased him. Leaning against the doorframe, his demeanor softened, reminiscent of the past when our relationship was still intact. As he chatted, he remarked, "I've been caught up with work and haven't been paying you enough attention. Our wedding anniversary's coming up, and you've always wanted a beach vacation. I'll take some time off so we can go and enjoy ourselves. Also, my birthday is around the corner. What are you getting me this year? I watched the water slowly begin to boil, momentarily lost in thought. Jason's birthday was exactly 2 weeks after our anniversary. In the past, I had always put great effort into making his birthday special, searching tirelessly for the perfect gift. But this year, I had a different plan. A divorce certificate. Thinking of this, I smiled and said, "I'll give you a surprise you'd never expect." Jason, oblivious to the shift in my attitude, was thrilled, interpreting my words as obedience. Wrapping his arms around my waist, he rested his chin on my shoulder, his breath warm against my skin. "Darling, it's been a while since we were intimate." "I'm on my period," I replied flatly. His excitement vanished instantly. Jason scowled. "Why is it that every time I initiate, you have some excuse? It's really disappointing." Since discovering his affair with Lily, I had refused to let him touch me. I feared the possibility of contracting something, except for that one time when I got drunk at a work gathering. Too exhausted to argue, I fabricated an excuse. Jason, visibly frustrated, stormed out of the kitchen. Later, when I placed the noodles in front of him, he glared at me and declared, "Let's just sleep in separate rooms from now on. Since you keep rejecting me, there's no point sharing a bed." This was exactly what I wanted. So I responded indifferently. "If that's what you prefer, so be it." Jason's face darkened, a mixture of anger and frustration flashing across his features. "Mandy, you're really something else." He slammed his chopsticks down and stormed out. Calmly, I disposed of the untouched noodles, applied a face mask, and started preparing to sleep separately. Just then, my phone vibrated. I picked it up to find a photo sent by Lily. Through the translucent glass of a hotel bathroom, I could see Jason showering. "Brother Jason," Lily captioned it. I gripped my phone tightly, my mind reeling. After a few seconds, I regained composure, took a screenshot of the chat history, and forwarded it to my lawyer as evidence of infidelity. Following Jason's suggestion of separate rooms, he embarked on a 10-day business trip. Though he didn't completely ignore me, he would occasionally send messages about his itinerary. What he didn't know was that Lily sent me daily updates, photos and videos flaunting their romantic getaway. As I scrolled through them, I sometimes drifted into a daze. Jason used to cherish me this way. He truly did love me once. But now, he was devoted to someone else. Then came a message from Lily. Today, he said he's willing to give me anything. He even asked me to have his child. "Sister Mandy, you've been married for so many years. Why haven't you had a baby with him? Or is it that you can't? Such a pity." A suffocating pain clenched my chest. From the moment I married Jason, I had longed to conceive, to make our little home lively and whole. But I never managed to get pregnant. Perhaps it was the damage inflicted by my stepfather in my childhood. Or maybe it was simply fate. I would never know. Another vibration from my phone. "Lily, if I were to have his baby, would you willingly divorce him?" I slowly moved my fingers and typed my reply. "Then go ahead. I wish you happiness." Setting my phone aside, I began packing my belongings and contacting a real estate agent. Jason's business trip lasted 10 days, and during that time, I methodically sorted through our possessions, dividing them into 3 categories: his, mine, and trash. The day he returned, I was about to take out the last bag of garbage when he noticed and frowned. "Why are you throwing away the plushie I gave you?" During our relationship, we had frequently played claw machines, filling our home with dozens of stuffed animals. I smiled and said, "I'm moving out. There's no space for it." Jason scowled. "Then you can't—" "Lily," I interrupted, shifting my gaze behind him. "Are you here to see Jason?" Jason's expression changed instantly. He turned sharply to reprimand her. "What are you doing here?" Lily immediately burst into tears, her youthful face pale and aggrieved. "There's a pervert lurking around the house. I had just rented the place. Yet he spent the previous night persistently knocking on my door and was loitering near my window throughout the day." Terrified, she clung to Jason's arm, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Brother Jason, I'm really frightened. Can I stay at your place for a few days? Please, I beg you." Jason instinctively held Lily protectively, but aware of my presence, he hesitated and carefully said, "Mandy, what do you think?" I immediately chuckled. "I've been in the process of moving these last few days, and my home is a complete mess. I don't have spare bedding or covers, so unfortunately, Lily won't be able to stay here." Hearing this, Lily's sobs grew heavier. "Brother Jason, what am I supposed to do now?" Jason shot me an unhappy glance, but I calmly added, "The new house is nearly ready. She can stay there instead." Jason seemed momentarily stunned into silence. Ignoring them, I headed downstairs to dispose of the garbage. When I returned, Lily was gone, and Jason stood alone in the dimly lit living room, frowning. "Are you really okay with letting Lily stay in our new home?" "Yes, I am. Is there an issue?" Jason's face darkened. "Mandy, you've been acting differently lately. Are you planning something?" I smiled. "In 2 weeks, it's your birthday. Naturally, I'm preparing a special surprise for you." At last, Jason's expression softened a bit. He then reminded me, "For our upcoming anniversary, you should take some time off work. I'll take you to the beach for a few days." That evening, Lily sent me a picture of her and Jason lying on the new bed in the house. Her message read, "Sister Mandy, the bed you picked is so soft. Brother Jason says it's far more comfortable than your old one. You must have worked hard to get the house in order. But Jason has been spending all his time with me, so he hasn't been able to help you. But isn't this what you should be doing anyway? After all, you're getting older and only have this one role left, right?" I didn't bother responding. I hadn't cleaned the new house myself. I had hired professionals and charged the expenses to Jason's credit card. I had no plans of living there, so no matter how much Jason and Lily defiled it was no concern of mine. Just then, a message arrived from the real estate agent. The buyer had agreed to a lump sum payment, and we would finalize the contract the next day. The funds would be in my account the following day, meaning I needed to vacate before then. I replied, confirming it was all fine. This had been my plan all along. Once the divorce was finalized, the old house would be mine, while Jason would keep the new house and the loan. As for our savings, we'd split them equally. The sale proceeded without any issues, and by nightfall, I had moved into a hotel. I sent Jason a message, informing him that I had sold the house and that he shouldn't return there. His response was laced with irritation. He was upset that I had gone through with the sale without notifying him first. I simply replied, "This is part of your birthday surprise." Jason's curiosity was piqued. "What have you planned for me? Is it expensive? Taking half of your assets must be costly, don't you think?" "Yeah, sounds pricey." On our wedding anniversary, I packed Jason's luggage as well. I had genuinely loved him, and taking a trip to the seaside with him had been a dream of mine since I was young. This journey would serve as the perfect closure to our relationship. Once the trip was over, I would have no lingering attachments to him. When it was time to leave, I called Jason to ask when he would arrive. The call was declined, and shortly after, I received a text. "Sorry, Mandy. I have to work overtime for a meeting. Let's postpone the trip. How about we go on my birthday instead?" Staring at the message, I suddenly burst into laughter. What a fool I'd been to think Jason and I would still take this farewell trip together. Moments later, another message came through from Lily. It was a picture of her and Jason holding hands, strolling along the beach. "The ocean view's breathtaking, Sister Mandy. Such a shame you couldn't be here. In just 2 weeks, the mandatory divorce waiting period would be over." I told myself I just had to endure a little longer. I hadn't eaten yet, so I ordered takeout and settled in to watch a web series. A few minutes later, someone knocked on the door. Surprised by the speed of the delivery, I got up to answer it. But when I opened the door, I saw the one person who could instantly drag me into hell. My stepfather. He had been released from prison. I tried to shut the door, but he forced his way inside. Grabbing my hair, he threw me to the ground and began hitting and kicking me relentlessly. I had no time to react. My strength was no match for his brute force. He struck me while cursing, blaming me for the years he had spent in jail. It felt like I had been sucked into a nightmare, back to the horrors of my childhood. Instinctively, I reached for my phone and dialed Jason's number, desperately hoping he would come and save me, just like before. A sharp slap landed across my face, sending me crashing to the floor. But I held onto my phone tightly. "Jason, please, pick up," I whispered. My stepfather let out a cruel laugh. Grabbing my hair again, he dragged me up and threw me onto the bed. His grip tightened around my throat. "Your husband is busy with his little lover right now. He won't come to save you, Mandy." A sudden realization struck me. Was it Lily? Did she tell you where to find me? His sneer deepened. "Of course. Your dear husband and his little mistress are both in on this." His voice turned icy. "If you call the cops, I'll make sure you pay for putting me behind bars." As his hand rose once more, I braced myself for the next strike. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Jason rejecting my desperate call for help. He was no longer the person who would come to my rescue. During his trip, Jason repeatedly tried to contact Mandy, sending messages and making calls. But she never responded. He wasn't exactly shocked. After all, it made sense that she'd be upset with him for skipping their anniversary trip. Still, even while he was with Lily, he couldn't shake an unsettling feeling. He wasn't sure if it was just his imagination, but there was a nagging sense that something had gone terribly wrong. Every chance he got, he dialed Mandy's number, only to find that her phone was turned off. His anxiety grew stronger by the minute. Ignoring Lily's frustration, he abruptly ended their seaside getaway. At the airport, he purchased a gift, hoping to smooth things over. As they walked, Lily linked her arm through his, her tone laced with dissatisfaction. "Brother Jason, are you really going to divorce her?" Jason's face tensed. "Why are you bringing this up now?" Lily's voice took on a probing edge. "My period is late this month. I think I might be pregnant." Jason's expression changed instantly. "Are you sure?" Lily frowned at him. "What's with that reaction? Didn't you say you always wanted kids? But Mandy's health, it's not great and she can't conceive. You've always regretted that, haven't you? Shouldn't you be happy now that I might be carrying your child?" Jason furrowed his brows. "It's not that simple. We need to go to the hospital for a checkup in a few days. Lily abruptly pulled her arm away, anger flashing across her face as she stormed off. Jason quickly followed, trying to calm her down. Because of this delay, it wasn't until the next day that he finally had time to track down Mandy at the hotel. He had decided it wasn't practical for her to keep staying there and intended to bring her back to their new home. At the reception desk, Jason was taken aback. She checked out? The receptionist looked at him warily. Who are you? What do you want with her? I'm her husband, he said. The receptionist's expression darkened with disdain. Husband? If that were true, you'd know that she was attacked by her stepfather in her home. She barely escaped with her life. If she hadn't managed to break free and run into a passerby, she might not have survived. The whole incident was serious and urgent. Jason froze in shock. His mind flashed back to the day Mandy had called him. He had ignored her because he was with Lily. Since then, she had completely disappeared. His face turned deathly pale. He had hung up on her distress call. He had fought so hard to pull her out of that nightmare before, only to throw her back into it himself. She must despise him now, probably enough to divorce him. A deep sense of dread engulfed him, and he sank to his knees. Determined to make amends, Jason searched relentlessly and eventually found out which hospital Mandy had been taken to. But when he rushed there, her bed was empty. It was clear she had planned this. She had been discharged that morning. Jason knew he had made a grave mistake and hurried back to their new home, only to find it completely vacant. As he looked around, he realized something. There wasn't a single trace of Mandy in this house. He frantically searched through cabinets and drawers, desperate to find even the smallest item that belonged to her. But there was nothing. The place was pristine, as if Mandy had never stepped foot inside. Unable to reach her by phone, Jason made his way to Mandy's workplace. That's when he learned she had submitted her resignation a month and a half ago and had officially left a week prior. Wandering aimlessly through the bustling streets, he was filled with sorrow and confusion. It finally hit him. He had lost Mandy. On Jason's birthday, I turned my phone on. Almost immediately, a call from him came through. I hesitated before answering. His voice was filled with urgency. Mandy, where are you? I'm coming to you right now, I responded calmly. Hang up first. I'll send you the location. Without waiting for his reply, I ended the call and sent him the address. Civil Affairs Bureau. Jason called again, but I ignored it. My phone buzzed continuously, this time from Lily. I didn't want to read her messages, but my eyes inadvertently caught snippets. I'm pregnant. It's brother Jason's child. I paused for a moment before looking away, a suffocating weight pressing down on my chest. After my stepfather's arrest, I reported Lily as well for revealing my whereabouts. Since she had conspired with him, I wanted her to be held accountable. However, to my surprise, my stepfather defended her, insisting she hadn't meant to expose me and that she wasn't involved. As a result, Lily was cleared. Sister Mandy, I heard your stepfather attacked you. Luckily, you weren't seriously hurt. That's great. We're both fortunate. You survived. And I'm pregnant. I shut my eyes, suppressing my emotions, and took screenshots of our conversation. Then I sent them to Jason, one after another. Jason immediately responded. Mandy, please let me explain. What happened with Lily was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I never planned to divorce you. After everything we've been through, the only person I love is you. I didn't bother reading the rest. After sending the screenshots, I deleted Jason's contact. When I arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau, Jason was already there. Though only 2 weeks had passed, he looked like a different person. Thinner, his eyes sunken and bloodshot. He stared at me, his gaze filled with desperation, and took a hesitant step forward. "Mandy!" I stepped back, my expression unreadable. "Let's get this divorce registered." Jason's voice lowered, almost pleading. "Can we go home first? Just give me a chance to explain. Don't rush into this." I continued walking forward, with Jason closely trailing behind, still unaware that he had already signed the divorce papers. He assumed we still had a month left for the cooling-off period, so he wasn't overly concerned. At least, not until we stopped in front of the divorce registration office. Only then did his expression shift. His face turned pale as he said, "Mandy, you don't want a divorce either, right? Look, you've even come to the wrong place. Let's just go home, okay?" I placed the divorce agreement in front of him and calmly responded, "The 30-day cooling-off period has long since passed. I'm here today to make our divorce official." Jason's disbelief was evident. "That's impossible. I never signed anything," he exclaimed. He grabbed the document, flipped to the last page, and his heart sank at the sight of his own signature. He suddenly recalled when he had unknowingly signed it. With a slow, deliberate smile, I said, "Jason, this is my birthday gift to you. Do you like it?" His face turned ashen. He finally realized that I had been planning this divorce for quite some time. Looking back, the signs had always been there. How we no longer fought about Lily. How I suddenly became more forgiving, even willingly giving up the new house. It all made sense now. In desperation, Jason grabbed my hand. "Give me another chance, Mandy. I will change." I met his gaze and replied evenly, "Jason, I don't love you anymore." The last trace of color drained from his face. In that moment, whatever lingering feelings I had for him completely vanished. While I was being attacked, he had been off vacationing with Lily. I was once grateful for having him in my life. We had loved each other once, but now it was time to move on. Jason's voice trembled. "Mandy, I still love you. Please, just one more chance." So I asked, "Lily is pregnant. If you don't divorce me, what about her? What about the baby?" He fell silent, struggling internally. Watching him waver, I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Did he truly love me? Or did he just not want to lose the wife who had always taken care of him? Judging by his pleading expression, he didn't love Lily that much either. Perhaps his attraction to her had been nothing more than temporary infatuation. But none of it mattered to me anymore. "Jason, let's end this marriage," I said firmly. This time, he didn't try to stop me. Once the divorce was finalized, he turned to me and said, "I'm sorry, Mandy. I really did love you." I was about to scoff at his words when I noticed Lily approaching out of the corner of my eye. Instead of mocking him, I asked, "What about Lily? If she wasn't pregnant, would you still have stayed married to me?" Jason's response was bitter. "No, Mandy. I never actually planned to leave you. If we had a child together, we wouldn't be in this situation now." I replied coldly, "Fortunately, we don't. A child doesn't deserve to be born into such a mess." Jason paled even further. He wanted to say something, but Lily's furious voice interrupted. She stormed over. Jason, what do you mean? That's not what you told me when you were pursuing me. I had no interest in watching their argument. I packed away my divorce certificate and left. Behind me, Lily shouted, Jason, go after her! I'll go get rid of the baby right now. I hailed a taxi and left without looking back. On the way, I received a message from Jason. Mandy, the bond we built over the last 10 years is deeper than anything. Will you wait for me? Wait until Lily has the baby. I didn't even bother finishing the message. I deleted it and blocked him. My plan had been to head straight to the station, but halfway there, a sudden wave of nausea hit me. I started throwing up uncontrollably. The driver pulled over and I clung to a trash can, vomiting for what felt like forever. I'm sorry, driver, I said weakly, covering my mouth. I dirtied your car. I'll pay for the cleaning. The driver, a cheerful, middle-aged woman with keen eyes, glanced at me knowingly. Sister, are you pregnant? I immediately took another taxi to the hospital and registered for an urgent checkup. I don't trust home pregnancy tests. Only a blood test could confirm it for sure. As I waited, I unconsciously placed a hand on my lower abdomen. I had always longed to have a child. As someone with no family, I had felt like a drifting weed, rootless and alone. A child would have given me a reason to stay grounded in this world. But not now, not like this. The father of my child could never be someone like Jason. The wait felt like an eternity. My thoughts swirled chaotically. A previous doctor had told me that my uterine wall was too thin, making conception difficult. Worse, I couldn't afford to have an abortion. It would only lower my chances of ever becoming pregnant again. I regretted ever going to that gathering. If I had stayed home, none of this would have happened. Just as these thoughts consumed me, Jason's voice suddenly rang out beside me. Mandy, why are you here? He followed my gaze, spotting the obstetrics department sign. His expression shifted from shock to elation. Without hesitation, he shoved Lily aside and ran toward me. You're pregnant, right? Mandy, we're having a baby. I'm not, I replied flatly. Jason refused to believe me. He was convinced I was pregnant, and merely keeping it from him because I wanted a divorce. Caught up in his own joy, he completely ignored Lily's furious expression. Let's get remarried, right now, Jason declared enthusiastically. From now on, I'll be devoted to you alone. I sighed and reiterated, Jason, I am not pregnant. And even if I were, I wouldn't want this child. I've already chosen to leave. I won't keep any lingering ties. If I'm going to cut you off, it'll be completely. Jason circled me anxiously. Mandy, don't be rash, okay? The baby is innocent. I'll break up with Lily right away. Whatever you want, I'll do it. Lily's enraged voice rang out. Jason, what about my baby? Isn't this child yours too? For the past 2 weeks, Jason had been tormented by guilt and pressure. Faced with Lily's outburst, he finally snapped. Completely losing control. I made sure you took your medication every time. So why didn't you follow the instructions? Now that you're pregnant, it's entirely on you. Lily stared at Jason in shock. That's not what you told me before. You said you always wanted kids. And if I got pregnant, I should keep the baby because you'd take responsibility and raise it. Jason, growing irritated, snapped. That was only because Mandy couldn't have children before. But now she can. So what do you even matter? Lily's face turned pale instantly. Her eyes burned with anger as she glared at Jason. And about my divorce. You promised we wouldn't let Mandy know about us yet. But you went behind my back, added her as a friend, and even sent her photos, forcing her to divorce you. Jason's voice was ice cold, laced with contempt. You're truly shameless and disgusting. I'm beyond disappointed in you. I'm going to kill you, Lily screamed, breaking down completely. Like a woman driven mad, she lunged at Jason, and the two of them started fighting. Seizing the moment, I quietly slipped away from the hospital and headed straight to the airport. I purchased the next available ticket and flew out immediately. I had already settled into a new home, and my medical checkups were now registered in my new city. Fortunately, it turned out I wasn't pregnant after all. It was just motion sickness in the taxi that day. Breathing a sigh of relief, I moved forward with my life as usual. The only reason I still had to occasionally deal with Jason was the division of assets, which was handled entirely through my lawyer. The lawyer mentioned that Jason refused to believe I wasn't pregnant and was searching for me everywhere. He also revealed that Jason forced Lily to have an abortion, which caused his closest friend to cut ties with him and resign from his lucrative job. What a shame. For the innocent child, at least. Before my lawyer could continue discussing Jason, I quickly cut him off. I had no interest in hearing about that man's downfall. Even if he died, I wouldn't spare a second thought. A year later, I unexpectedly ran into Jason again at the airport. He was completely unrecognizable. His once chiseled face had hollowed out, stubble covered his chin, and his unkempt hair made him look like a homeless wanderer. The sharp, polished air of an elite businessman had long disappeared. Lily was still with him, dressed in a flowing bohemian-style floral dress. She still sought attention, but her complexion was dull. Her once proud eyes had lost their shine, and she looked frail and lifeless, like a withered flower. They were quarreling in public, their voices echoing through the terminal, drawing the stares of onlookers. A honeymoon? That's a joke. You're just using it as an excuse to track down your ex-wife. Lily spat venomously. She already sent you the test results. Why won't you accept that she's not pregnant? She let out a bitter laugh before continuing, her voice laced with pain and resentment. Your child, your only child, died inside me, Jason. And you're the one who killed it. You can never make up for what you owe me. Even if you find your ex-wife, I won't let you go. My child and I will haunt you forever like ghosts seeking revenge. As I observed the scene, a gentle voice spoke beside me. Do you know them? I turned away from the chaos and smiled at the person next to me. That's my ex-husband and his newly official mistress. So, it's them after all. Seeing Jason in such a miserable state, I felt at peace. The man beside me grinned. Well, I'd say I'm now much more handsome than him, and I'm probably wealthier too. I rolled my eyes playfully. George, don't joke. I'm happily single. The man at my side was not just my boss, but also an old classmate who once had a crush on me. With a calm smile, he replied, That's fine. I have all the time in the world to wait for you. I said nothing more, merely walking alongside him as we stepped toward the bright lights ahead. And with that, the story came to an end.